This episode of the AI XR podcast is brought to you by our friends at Zapper. If you're in the XR space, you've probably felt the pain of juggling different tools, vendors, and platforms just to get an AR or VR project off the ground. It's exhausting, and it can really slow you down. That's where Zapper comes in. They built a complete suite of tools and creative services all under one roof to make creating immersive experiences not just possible, but practical. Their next gen 3D web tool, Mattercraft, is a game changer for building immersive experiences for headsets, smartphones, and AR, VR, and WebXR. It combines the power and flexibility of the 3JS rendering engine with a rich visual editor, making it super intuitive and easy for designers and developers to use. Put simply, you get the creative freedom of a powerful 3D engine with none of the headaches. So if you're ready to take your immersive projects to the next level, head over to zapper.com and see what they can do for you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink with Ted Shilowitz and Rony Abovitz for the AI XR podcast. It's Friday, August 15th, 2025. Good to see you guys.
Hey, guys.
Morning, fellow podcasters.
I'm still trying to figure out, Riverside is definitely, as Rony just said, we're sort of getting used to it. And I think the recording quality is better. So far, so good. Our guest today is Jess Loren. She's the CEO of Global Objects. Ted, you know Jess, right? She's been around.
Yeah. She's had an interesting career.
Yeah, she's been around special effects and Hollywood for some time, and now is working with Global Objects, which specializes in 3D assets, and they're working with some big companies and studios. So I'm interested to hear how that's being implemented. You know, it was a very metaverse-y thing, but 3D seems to be making a bit of a comeback.
Yeah, I have this curiosity in my mind. Rony, I'd be curious what you think about this too. In the age of AI that we live in now, if you can just prompt a object into existence and don't have to scan it or create it, it'll be interesting to talk to Jess about that and see, because with the new models, things are getting more and more realistic, right? To the point where you just synthesize it. You don't actually need to capture it in any way, shape, or form, which I just did a big presentation yesterday talking all about it. So it's kind of fascinating to study it.
It's going to be a fight between someone actually making something and then, speaking it into existence and then like volumetrically capturing it, so it's going to be really interesting. I think like there's going to be a push and pull. All of them have certain limits. None of them are perfect right now.
Yeah.
So and if you look I think on a production, you'll use all three probably.
If you look at it through the lens of cinema, this has always been the push and pull of media creation, right? That is the VFX business, is what can we synthesize with the tools of the day, going all the way back to models, matte paintings, clay work, up to the point where we can synthesize it with 3D objects and a team of artists, toiling away on computers, working by hand on keyboard and mouse, to the point of now prompting something. So it's a global phenomenon. It touches every industry, right? The sort of automation of those industries and creationism. Sort of interesting to study.
It's interesting. Before the introduction of AI, of course, there was a lot of talk, both in special effects and in gaming, about the combination of filmmaking and special effects techniques and game engines, and how filmmaking and the creation of 3D games and virtual worlds was starting to merge together. And then AI is now added to this mix. Everybody agrees the game industry, like the film industry, the costs are completely out of control and disproportionate to the risk of making them. So it'll be interesting to see. I do think Global Objects, as well as game engines, we've talked about the work Unity has done with Weta, as well as what Unreal Engine is now doing for virtual production. So Global Objects has a place in that puzzle. So it'd be great to talk about that. One thing that came up this week and got a lot of press on a relatively slow August week was the leak that Mark Gurman of Bloomberg released and everybody covered, which is that Apple's big play, their big idea, is home robots. They're calling it home robots. It sounds like an improved sort of pad with home controls and Siri, but I think they have bigger vision than that.
Well, it's interesting, within some of the shows on Apple TV, is that a harbinger of what they're actually trying to create and bring into the real world with, robotics and home automation? And is it also a play against the Sam Altman, Johnny Ives, God knows what they may be creating with their OpenAI hardware? And is this Apple preemptively saying, this is our domain, we do this, and we will do this better than anybody else? So we may not actually release the thing first, but we will release the thing that everybody wants eventually, and that is why Apple is Apple. So there's some gamesmanship, I think, going on there. Who knows?
There's
By the way,
well, go
one
ahead,
thing
Ron.
that's like context for you guys. There's a show on Netflix right now. It's kind of cheesy, but it's worth watching. It's called Titans: The Rise of Hollywood.
My
And
mom
it's
is watching it right now. She was telling me about it last night.
and it's like, what does it have to do with our show or anything? It's like the emergence of like Warner Brothers and Fox and Paramount and all of that. But you'll find reminiscent echoes of like all the fights that are going on right now. First, it was like which star, and then it's distribution, and then it's like who controls production. Like Thomas Edison had this like mob like thing where they wouldn't let anyone use cameras, so they were going to other countries and doing it. But the really funny thing was like the emergence of sound. Oh, and like Fox owned Movie Tone. And for just each one of those battles, it's like you think the battle's won and it's very myopic. If you look back, it gives that long-term view to what we're doing right now. Right? Everyone's having these very myopic little battles like this thing and then I win it all, right? It's a continuous, forever changing thing. Right.
Big
And
part
just
of
replace Warner and Paramount and Fox with Apple and Meta and Amazon. It's like the same titans having the same battles over largely distribution, creation, who controls production, who controls the IP, who controls talent. It's like there's some universal themes that are really interesting.
This is why the tech companies are going to end up owning Hollywood. They're coming to own distribution, and once you own distribution, like the cable titans, like Comcast, you start acquiring the content providers and start going down the value chain in your vertical.
Rony, does it cover in the show? I haven't started watching it yet. That the reason Hollywood even exists was to escape the patents on the East Coast.
It's true.
The lockdown.
Yes,
that
they totally cover it, which is amazing. But I'll give you one rebuttal, Charlie and Ted. This is going to sound interesting too. Maybe why they can't own Hollywood. So they have a really good section on an actress named Mary Pickford. She
Sure.
founded United
Started
Artists
United
with Charlie
Artists, yeah.
Chaplin, right? And the interesting thing about Mary Pickford is she directed one of the most successful films in the early era ever. She starred in it and directed in it. But what she's really famous for is films went from like, here's a horse jumping over something or a train coming at you to, she kind of invented emoting and acting on screen
drama,
in a real
right?
way.
She created the idea of drama. Yeah.
Realistic drama, method acting. I think that understanding that she has is absent in almost all tech companies. That is like if you go, what's the essence of what Hollywood really is? It's that people know how to project something that's not quantifiable across the screen, and that is not the expertise of the north part of California. Somehow that's what LA is supposed to be good at. If LA is going to save itself, it has to find like the next Mary Pickford that gets it. Because what she did was not technology based, but that really blew things open. And then everyone forgot that and they're chasing like all these tech add-ons. But if you really met what is the whole point of it, it's like what she did. So I don't think that's what the tech guys are good at all.
Well,
Open for debate.
there's a lot to unpack there. I'm actually, as I may have mentioned to you guys, working on a book project, which may or may not come to
Ooh.
naught, about what is going to happen with AI and media, and in specific, the entertainment industry. So the first question is, you have to understand the studio's advantages. Right? Scarcity is going away. Control of the means of production is going away. Control of distribution is going away. Doesn't mean the studios are going to disappear. They control a lot of valuable IP and distribution pipelines, which are still the main ones, although they're clearly being eroded by social media. And into this fraught environment enters AI. So you really have to ask yourself, first of all, what is Hollywood? What is being affected here? Is this a incremental improvement in the way we do special effects? Will this enable James Cameron to take $600 million in special effects and do it for $50 million? And there is no question that is a lot of what's happening, right? We are taking what we're already doing and we're making it cheaper, we're making it faster, and making it more widely distributed and democratized, right? Hollywood no longer controls the means of production to the extent that they did before, because there's still a monopoly on talent, right? And specifically the brokerage and management of talent. And I would say to you that more than the studios is what Hollywood is. Hollywood is the concentration of that talent, so to enable and lubricate their collaboration. But with
You just
scarcity,
made CAA very happy,
what'd you say?
right? Any CAA William Morris guys listening right now, you just made them very happy because that's their business.
Yeah, they should be happy because they're, working with the celebrities of tomorrow wherever they come from. And here's my other point. And it is about the studio's gradual loss of a monopoly on distribution to the tech companies. Because those celebrities are going to come from sports, they're going to come from social media, and they're going to be in a position unlike any star in the past, except if you go back to Mary Pickford and Charlie Chaplin. And their power is that they will have a big enough audience on social media that they don't need a studio, right? Mr. Beast can establish Mr. Beast Studios, make movies or TV shows or social media series with whomever he chooses, and have incredible distribution for that product, and
United
sell
Artists all over
and
again,
sell
right?
the advertising directly to sponsors. Right? They don't need a network. So network television sales is not Hollywood. Right?
Well, actually,
Hollywood is the talent.
But Charlie, wouldn't you argue that what is going on with like influencers, the big ones, they're like a fragmented UA. They have taken the power back, and now they control distribution and productions. They're like, we really don't need you now. The talent realized that back at the formation of UA, but they couldn't fight the business enough. So maybe talent's like surfacing to the top again and saying, no, this show's ours right now, boys. That's what's happening.
Yeah, because they can go direct to the consumers. That studios no longer have a monopoly on that. Remember, they had a monopoly on both the theaters, the means of distribution, as well as the means of production and capital. So those advantages have been severely eroded. But the studios are, most of them, public stocks, and they can go out and acquire these new AI companies that are innovating. But I think the real fear I have is that we're fighting the last war, right? The problem isn't the cost of production. The problem isn't runaway production. Those are symptoms of massive changes going on in the way people want to spend their leisure time and be entertained. Right? Going into a dark room with a bunch of strangers to watch, what you usually watch on your phone on a 60-foot screen is an incredible experience that you will have like once a year. Like people go to live theater once every 5 years. It'll be an IMAX showing. It'll cost them $50. It won't be a casual decision like you want to hang out or you want to go to the movies like we made in the 70s because movies were $1.50. And it was just a completely different world. So I would say Hollywood really, if you think about it as talent, has nothing to worry about, although it will be distributed more largely geographically. But the studios are a big part of the formula. They're not going away, but their advantages are being severely eroded. Which is why I think they're going to try and buy their way out of it. But the last war is synthetic content. In the same way that Meta is making ads, Meta or TikTok, the way Reels work and the way TikTok works is that they start assembling material in the background while they're showing you the present content based on your psychographic. There's no reason it has to go searching around and aggregating that stuff from third parties. It could easily make it synthetically at some point, and probably it'll be so personalized that you'll love it. It'll even be more addictive than it is now. So that's the biggest threat.
So Epic Games is really good at like understanding player behavior and psychology and micro rewarding you in a very subtle way that you start to like more and more what's happening. So what you're describing, Charlie, and tell me if you guys think this is where things go. You're watching a movie, and then instead of a Netflix recommendation engine, it sounds like 20 more movies have been created for you along the lines of I like Will Ferrell in Blades of Glory or whatever, and then it's like also like Anchorman. Suddenly, like more Will Ferrell movies
Yes.
that never happened appear. And Will Ferrell, by the way, is just making bang because all he's doing is license his likeness. But suddenly, there's like hundreds of Will Ferrell movies for Ted that are different than the ones for Charlie, and then Charlie like looks at Ted's movie. It's like, wait, that's different.
Mhm.
But then you guys start sharing, like, so the creation of a Will Ferrell movie might be like 5 seconds one day.
So
Yes.
there's a great SNL skit from a number of years ago where there's a couple on their couch watching Netflix and they're watching all those British baking show things.
God, yeah.
And then they cut to the behind the scenes. And what's really happening is that the people that are working at Netflix are actually assembling the show in real time. They're like, wait, there's someone that wants to watch this show. And then they actually put up the green screen and start making it in real time. It's very funny.
It's
I'm not
very true.
saying the joke exactly right, but it's very, very funny. It's very,
But-
So
But
I
here's
see
the thing, like, don't you think the dead will come back to life? What I mean by that is SNL Samurai Taylor. Let's say you love John Belushi, and
I don't.
Charlie's obsessed. Okay,
I
Ted's
don't.
obsessed with that.
That's not going to happen, and I'll tell you why. Nobody
Why?
cares who James Dean is. That's like caring about something your mom cared about. You're not going to care about, actresses and actors from the 1930s. They're not relevant anymore. People want their contemporaries. They want real celebrities. I don't think that the idea that Tom Hanks is going to be starring in movies 50 years after his death is real. I don't think that's going to happen. There'll be new actors. There'll be actors who reflect current
That's
tastes, like Mary Pickford does, right? Mary Pickford was hip and liberated.
Then.
And now you look at pictures of her and you understand how United Artists work, and you think, wow, it was difficult then and it's difficult now. So Mary Pickford, hats off to her. It's hard for a woman to direct a film, because they've got to contend with all these relationships that are, based on the built-in and time-tested sexism of the industry. I know it's bad to talk about woke things, but like ageism, which I talk about a lot, these are also real things.
But don't you think, like for example, my daughter and her friends love watching Friends, and they don't know what era that was. They just like
Right.
Friends. So could the Friends cast show up with?
But I
new
watched
stars
I
from
Love
today?
Lucy in the 60s. So I don't know. This is a longer conversation about nostalgia and media and how that works, which
That's
is actually
interesting.
another topic that I love. But let's move on. I see Jess is in the green room. We have
Bring
a
her in.
message. We have a message from our sponsor, Vitcher, coming up, and then we'll bring in Jess. The guest segment of the AI XR podcast is sponsored by the new Luma series of Vitcher XR glasses. Vitcher is the quiet giant of video smart glasses, preferred by gamers and #1 in US sales. The expanded 52-degree field of view shows me a virtual 152-inch screen. For the best in mobile gaming and entertainment, go to luma.vitcher.com or Amazon and get yourself a pair. Jess Loren, great to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Good morning, gentlemen. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Thanks for
Morning.
joining us on our little show.
And you know Ted, of course. I don't know if you and Rony are acquainted,
Great to meet you.
but we were having a great conversation at the top of the show about specifically the merger of games and filmmaking techniques as well. So we've been talking about that probably for decades at this point, but it's really happening, right? Game engines, and virtual production are now playing a big part. It's sort of like VR. It's not exactly new, but of course, behind the scenes, it's brand spanking new and continues to evolve. So you're in the middle of that.
I sure am. I just wanted to say, first of all, congrats on Top 100. You guys did it. So much
Woohoo! Thank you.
capture went into that. So congrats to you guys. You kept with it, and now you're Top 100. Woo! So, yeah, I mean, as far as how I got into all of this is, everyone knows the story of Mandalorian, and my husband happens to be, a phenomenal VFX supervisor, artist, and all the things. And I said, we got an LOI for about $20 million to open one of those stages. And, fast forward, I got pregnant and it was just not the right time for us. So we kind of jellyfished away from the deal. But, from not having opened the stage, we said, well, where's all this content coming from? Where's the big library of ready to go content for these virtual production walls, and there really wasn't any at the time. So we kind of went down this road of creating that type of content, and but I really wanted to understand, photoreal, right? And how can you achieve that? So we got into scanning technologies and started purchasing a lot of, Leica equipment, RTC 360s. We're heavily in Gaussian splats now and going down that rabbit hole. So, but yeah, that's where I'm trying to digitize the world. I say I'm doing it for my children, just because I think in this world of AI, I want to understand what's real and what's generated, and if we can start with kind of a source truth of something, I want them to, be able to experience the pyramids of Egypt in their classroom, hopefully.
So tell us who are some of your clients? Who are the folks that are reaching out to you saying, we need these objects, we need these locations, we need these geographic areas, and who are they? What are they?
Yeah.
How do they pay you? How does all that come together?
Yeah, so right now, we obviously have a heavy foot in, the studio business. So a lot of the studios, we're talking to all of them. So a lot of them for, virtual production uses with splats and having those ready to go for their stages. Also for scanning, a lot of these studios have warehouses full of IP connected to certain things that they've had for, maybe 100 plus years of all of the things that they've been collecting and warehousing. So now we can go in and we can scan those elements to then have them in what we call the Global Objects Vault. And they can have those for, if they want to put them into gaming for skins, or if you want to train on that data for the future of your generative AI purposes, that's what we come in and do. So our team is very in tune with, all things photogrammetry, blue laser, and LiDAR, and splats. And, we figure out the best tool that'll work for them and what they need. A lot of the studios come to us with their problems, meaning something they're trying to solve, and we'll come up with a solution because we're pretty tool agnostic. We just work what's best for the job.
So a producer would look at they've got to go shoot in the Amazon rainforest or something, and they're like, boy, that's going to be an extra expense. What are our alternatives? They go look at stock footage. There's nothing that's appropriate or high resolution or dynamic enough to put against a video wall or using VFX. And then they reach out to you accordingly and say, we only have this much sort of budget allocated for this. Is there a solution for this within Global Objects? Is that a
Most definitely. I sign a lot of NDAs, but what I can talk about is Fox came to us and said, listen, we're doing these historical series. The first one was with Rob Lowe, and now they have Kelsey Grammer. So both, well-known celebrities that they didn't necessarily want to send to these far-off locations. So they would send in our team. We would capture. So in the case of, we did the Boston Tea Party. So in that case, we sent our crew out to Mystic Seaport in Connecticut and scanned the entire seaport. We were going to have 3 days to do it. Turns out there was a hurricane coming. We had 1 day. So my team was very effective in, doing LiDAR and photogrammetry, drone work. And we were able to create an entire digital twin of this seaport. And then the director was able to come in, create all the shots. We put it on a virtual production stage here in Los Angeles, brought in Rob Lowe, and we did 12 setups in 1 day, and we got them out 4 hours early. So, that's the magic of all the cost savings that you can see here now. Same with, Kelsey Grammer. We shot Mount Vernon, and then we also did a historical site outside of Boston for another one. So they've come back multiple times now because there's a ton of cost savings that are there, because the uncanny valley doesn't have to be uncanny anymore.
Okay, so here's the next part of that question, which is the beginnings of a very large controversy in terms of this type of work product and many other work products in the movie making business of all scale, from indie to giant, big budget tentpole stuff, with the continued very quick evolution of AI for visual creationism. And the idea that someone could go and research, okay, I need to do this with a Gaussian splatter. I need to go send out a crew and capture this photorealistically and then materialize that. That's going to have some budget associated with it. The budgets are certainly coming down, but it's still going to be real cost for a studio versus prompting in, I need Mount Vernon circa, 1747 with 3,000 extras in these kinds of costumes, et cetera, prompt that in, spend less than $1,000 in VO credits or some other credit to create that synthetically. Are you, number one, looking at that business model, maybe getting into that business model? And how do you start to sort of grapple with this next phase of technology, allowing a synthesized version of that we're seeing in the year 2025 is starting to look pretty photorealistic, and will start to be at that illusion level that will work for a large studio project, which I think 2 or 3 years ago, we'd say this is interesting, but no way is a studio going to actually use this to plug into a $100 million movie. Now we're starting to see that. Flash forward 5 years from now in the 2030s, and I think all these businesses are going to look very different. So you must have some sort of take and investigation of this, or starting to look at what's going to happen and how you play that a role into that world.
Yeah, I think everything that we're doing, we're scanning, we have clearances, right? We have the rights to be there. Even down to the props. So we just recently did a deal with ISS, the largest props holder in the world. They have locations here in California, New York, Atlanta, Budapest, and London. So they have over 5 million objects, right? So, speaking of the large tech companies, NVIDIA came to us and said, we'd love to train on your data. We said, okay, well, what's a small set? About 40,000 random objects. And we're like, so at the time I was like, well, how am I going to find 40,000 random things? Am I going to go to every garage sale in the world? Like, what am I going to do? And I was like, Jessica, you work in entertainment, prop house, duh. So, I'm very proud to say we have this deal in place now. And going back to the 1970s, ISS has been tracking where every single prop has been going into all film and television. So now we have this large data set that we can look back against as well. But what's interesting there is, provenance and tracking. So we are attaching that to all of our data. And I think there's other companies out there that are starting to do that as well. Every conversation that I have with every major studio or government entity wants to understand where our data is coming from. So I think in our case, we are, trying that clean data path. I think in other cases, I think there's a lot of court cases that are going to figure this out for us very quickly. You said, 5 years forward, I think we're in a place where we're going to probably have that mostly figured out. So for us, it's a clean data approach. But, what does the future hold? I think the legal system will figure that out for us.
So if I can digress a bit, Jess, I'm interested in your take on something that is going on that doesn't, I don't think, have to do with the really high end that you're dealing with, the photographic quality assets. So two things. First, I want to talk a little bit about Niantic and the Scaniverse, because with a free app on your phone, you can scan any everyday object. Some are easier to scan than others. There are nuances. It doesn't like reflections. You have to have, appropriate lighting. But you can still make a pretty good splat or do a pretty good object capture on your phone. So now here comes the twist, right? So you've captured a 3D space, let's say an art gallery or a square in Europe. I was running around Europe making splats everywhere and uploading them to the Niantic cloud, where I can share them in a 3D virtual world. And in my Quest, and I used to have to do this experiment with my students using Unity, but instead Niantic is uploading all those scans to the Quest, and supposedly you can teleport all over the world and walk around inside of your splats. Now, it doesn't work. It can't do anything of the sort. It only works on the app, on the phone. The VR experience is one of the worst apps on the Quest. So Niantic, WTF, you guys made a great app, and then you made the worst VR application ever. So maybe you should stick to the phone, Niantic, if you're listening, and not mess around with VR where you're not going to make any money anyway. So I don't really understand Niantic's strategy there, but now they have aggregated a crowdsourced version of the physical world, and we have AI. Can't we take those splats, which are incredibly janky, and when you blow them up and walk around inside of them, their extreme jankiness is completely revealed? But does it have to be that way? Can't we take AI and all of these 3D splats and come up with photorealistic 3D representations of millions potentially of crowdsourced uh, locations in the physical world.
I mean, that's my hope, right? My mission is to digitize the world, and I'm not going to be able to do it with my team of 22 people. So, for sure, what's interesting is, I talk about our mission, right? And if you're familiar with like the story of Noah's Ark, is, you took two animals, male and female, you put them on the boat, in case the big flood comes, and we've stored that data, right? So Charlie, yes, I think as the human people on planet Earth, I want to make sure that we have captured our world as is now in this time, as well as from the past. If you have, like we said, the pyramids, we want to make sure that before, another war or another storm or whatever takes out what we have left on planet Earth, that we have that data. If you saw that show at the Sphere, I can't remember what it was called, but at the end of it, everyone flies off in the rocket ship to go to another planet. And it's kind of like this, like, oh, but what about planet Earth, right? So I want to make sure that we've, captured this data. We've captured, everything that we can find. At ISS, they have the largest collection of covered wagons from the 1800s, so these are things that are going to degrade. And we've talked about museums, there's antiquities. I think the Vatican, the church, the Catholic Church has the largest collections of antiquities from, on planet Earth. They should be scanning these and making sure that we have that data for the future.
You're trying to create like a archive of the human history on the planet somehow.
Yeah, I would say that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's a company called TurboSquid that sort of takes a different take at this, that's trying to just give you the opportunity to catalog and find a three-dimensional asset for pretty much everything you want. The challenge with it is the quality level is all over the map, and you can sort of choose, but it's sort of an open market, kind of an auction, right? You sort of get what you pay for. So you can buy models for $10 or $15 that may be appropriate for a little web video or some school project, and you can buy things for thousands of dollars that have real professionals working on them. And that's kind of interesting. Where do you fit into that world? Like, would you put your assets into a TurboSquid, or your goal is to keep it sort of in your own domain and people come to you for it?
I had the same question, because I was going to ask you about the Epic Games Asset Store. And of course, Unity has one too, where you can grab 3D assets and drag them into your level in a game engine.
Yeah, that's something we're going through right now. We're building our own ecosystem, so we will have our own version. But looking at other platforms and releasing our content there is also an option. I think how it's different, from us, Ted, is that we are looking at an object from the real world. Like, there are many amazing artists out there, but it's all their artistic vision and their, version of what the calculator could or should look like. I think from ours, we're going through with a pass of blue laser to understand this is 5 inches across. This is
most of our listeners are on audio only, so I would just share with them that Jess is using a calculator, a handheld calculator on her desk as an example.
Yeah, circa like 1995 calculator.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say also for the use cases of robotics, Ted, right? Like, I want to understand how heavy this is, or how do I press the button to get, the answer that I need, or, how do I I'm holding a glass. How does the robot grab that glass? So all of the objects and things that we're scanning, yes, they can be used in great media and entertainment applications, but I think for the future of our world spatially and how robots are going to operate around us, we'll also have that data set.
Yeah, it's interesting. Really interesting.
I'm recalling a company named Quixel that was running around scanning the world in all sorts of interesting ways. They were scanning rocks, they were scanning moss, they were scanning images that could be used as textures and placed onto 3D objects. So I'm interested in your thoughts about Quixel. I'm not quite sure what happened to them after
I think they actually got acquired by Epic
Games.
Yes, they got acquired, and the project, I mean, they still do scene capture, but yeah, I was very much inspired by them, and I think it was a great mission, and it's something very similar we are doing. So on the environment side, so we call environments scapes, and I think for us, we just captured a casino. I think we're one of the first people that's been allowed into a casino in Oklahoma. So we're really excited about, the Grand Casino. They were very forward thinking. And for their case, it was they wanted to create a digital twin because with the Gaming Commission, they have certain rules about cameras on the gaming floor. They, if they shut down for a certain amount of time, they lose a certain amount of money. So we came in and digitized, we're digitizing the casino for them to save money so they can shoot their commercials in, right? So I think that's another interesting case. And now they'll have this twin also to do, placing of the gaming on the floor, or, crowd flow, or there's so many different applications. We were even talking to a theme park about how does the sun operate over the park so that their characters who are in these costumes in the summer heat, we can put them in locations where they're in the shade, right? So there's so many applications for digital twins. We do it at the highest fidelity. There's a lot of companies that do them for architectural grade where, they're not so worried about, every little texture of like, what does the carpet look like or what did the wallpaper look like? But when my team's going in, specifically like with the Grand Casino, like we ask for the tiles in the ceiling. Like, do you have extras? So our artists here in LA can stare at it basically when they're retexturing that twin or the carpet. We want to make sure the fibers, we can see those because, again, I want to make sure we're replicating the world as it is seen by us as humans.
So just question, digital twin stuff super interesting. Are you doing the visuals or are you also doing like the physics, like the acoustics of that space and this carpet would have this kind of material property? Because once you start to do that, then suddenly you're filming in there, but the sound is accurate. And you've got this carpet, this thing, if you make a change, it's suddenly changing the acoustics so that you really can use it. Are you going that level of digital twinning?
Yes, most definitely that is in our future. I wouldn't say we're there quite yet, but like here in North Hollywood, we have 3 buildings, and between us is a studio called Matter Music. So we've been talking to them a lot about sound. These guys have been in the business forever, and we've been really grateful to talk to them about sound and how does sound bounce off of carpet versus this versus that. So yeah, that's definitely something that's on our pipeline.
Speaking of sound, are you by the airport?
I am in the Burbank Airport path. And, I had my headphones. I charged them at home last night. I took them out and then I took them out to charge them and then forgot them. So I followed the rules. Sorry, but I forgot.
We have a sound engineer who goes through now and tries to clean things up. I think a plane engine is probably an easy one, but our listeners will determine that.
And from what I can gather, your business model is firmly right now in the professional domain. Like there's no pricing on your website about assets and things like that, right? People call you and you work on a budget with them to create something, and then they can compare that to other production solutions and do that, right? That's your business today.
Yeah. So honestly, we've been really blessed to have a great investor. So we have one investor for our seed. We spent a good 2 years in research and development. So R&D has been really important to us to figure out, our workflow and how we are scanning things to achieve that best, highest fidelity look. So only over the past, I would say, couple of months did we start taking on clients. And we're very much interested in, projects that, stretch our imagination and are interesting things to solve. So, and something I am allowed to talk about is Microsoft and NVIDIA have this program they called Catalyst. They chose 6 companies in the world that are looking at AI in different ways and using their products. So Global Objects was chosen as one of those 6. So later this year, the piece is going to come out. They sent out a crew to follow us around and meet some of our clients. So you'll meet one of our media and entertainment clients. You'll meet a government client where we scanned an electric bus and all the applications and ways that you can now use this bus in city planning. And then we also went to a museum, the Museum of Latin American Art. So, how this museum can now have these digital twins of their art, and the art can live on forever, even when they change out, the museum pieces. So
that's great. So you're on a really interesting path, a very divergent path from, I think, a lot of the world that's sort of studying what are the mass market applications for something. You're actually looking at what are the individualized critical cases that will require this technology, and other technologies will actually not be appropriate for them. So that's an interesting business, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, going back to my mission is for my children to understand what is real, what is not real. I think we're going down this path of very, very, very quickly of what is our human eye going to understand what's real and what's not? And I think we have to figure that out now before.
I think that is an urgent issue. I put in my column this week a poll that I put on X about whether or not AI content needs to be labeled. And my experience on social media as a user is very much, yes, it does. Because I mean, the social media knows me, so it's showing me pictures of Australian shepherds and exotic travel destinations, and half of it is fake. And so I find myself looking at my feed saying, this is fake, this is fake, this is fake, instead of enjoying the content. I mean, they've drained a lot of the enjoyment by not regulating this. And I can't believe I'm alone in feeling this way. It has nothing to do with ethics or anything else. It just has to do with the joy of using an app like TikTok, which is what made them. And Instagram Reels, by the way, saved Meta. Meta's valuation without Instagram Reels would still be in the hundreds of billions of dollars. So, I think that
only.
yeah, only. So I do think that this idea of synthetic content, whether it's scanned or not, needs to be labeled in social media for the sake of the media and entertainment and nothing else.
Just do you worry some of the big AI players are hovering around what you're doing to slurp it up? But do you think they slurp it up and then they're like, okay, we're done feeding. Thank you so much. And then they're like, we don't need you anymore. Like, how do you protect against that?
Yeah, so most definitely, I think that's exactly why I haven't done a deal yet. But
Okay.
having all of those conversations, getting that exclusive deal with ISS, and I'm the only one who's able to scan, these 5 million things. So I'm working through that. I have a great team. Jess Loren, former Chief Innovation Officer over at Warner Media, has come on board with us, and he's really thinking about these deals and strategically. And we have a lot more enterprise customers coming on board that we are thinking those things through with.
I would say unsolicited guidance. I probably don't need it, but if you can avoid doing a deal with any of them forever, you will be one of the companies that survives. I think once you do the deal with you, it's like, hi, let me take the candy away from you. They need what you have. If you never give it to them, at some point, you don't need them. You'll figure out your own way to do your version of that. But the thing you have is what they want. And I think companies that manage to maintain a boundary around that, it's like, you can only get it from us. There's no other place in the world. Like if you can avoid any of the big players, I think all of them will hover around you because they're just gobbling things up left and right. And whether it's 2 years from now, 5 or 10, I think they're done with everyone that makes the deal with them. It's almost like a deal with the devil. If you could avoid that, 10 years from now, we'll still be talking to you and you'll be much bigger. That's just my experience with all the big players. It's like your food, they want to eat it. Once they're done eating, it's over. They only have to eat once. They eat once at the trough. They never need you again.
Yeah, well, I think Ted, you were saying earlier, have I put all of my objects on any of these platforms yet? And that's one of the reasons is I've been very protective of my digital twin babies, and so we're going through a round right now. So if any of your listeners are looking to invest, I'll happily take your call because there's a lot of.
I think investors should fund companies like you to make sure you can keep that boundary up.
Yeah.
And the tricky thing is a lot of the people that want to fund you are those companies that will give you the funding, but like, okay, we now want what you have. I have a friend that made this deal. He's a robotics player with one of the big hyperscalers. Everything his robots do feeds one of their big AI systems. I'm like, at some point they're done with you, and they just announced they have a competitive program building the same kind of robot. So they're just like using him and they'll throw him away. It's like you're an orange and they eat the inside and throw away the peel. But I think if you can show an investor that you can avoid that, you're super fundable.
Well, I really appreciate that advice very much. So maybe we.
So Jess, one thing we do in the show, and it's a tradition, we jump right in
We jump
to
in.
all the current topics. But I was looking at your LinkedIn. And my gosh, have you had an interesting career working for all sorts of companies and really following the progression of the development of this technology, both the game engine technology and also AI for the past couple of years. So I think it would be interesting for our listeners, particularly young women, to hear your story and understand both what you had to overcome and what you envision in the future.
Yeah, so I'm a Chicago girl. I grew up in the suburbs outside of, well, I was born in Chicago, then moved to the suburbs, went to Schaumburg High School, and then went to college at Indiana University. There wasn't an entrepreneur program back then, and I was the Girl Scout who sold all the cookies. I won the award for like having sold the most cookies in the state, all the things. So I had the lemonade stands and everything. So entrepreneurialism I felt was like in my blood, and business school wasn't there for me. So while I was in college, I started a company called Chi-Town Deals. We were kind of the first answer to what Groupon, or what it was called Tipper at the time. So very quickly grew that. I had a LOI from the Tribune company very quickly, and then wound up selling that company. So I was very young when I sold my first company. With that knowledge, this is back when social media, was kind of still organic, and you could, not really game the system, but truly grow. So I started a social media marketing company, and offered white label services for B2B, and then grew that company. Also sold that company to a large experiential company. It was an acqui-hire, and I went and worked for them for a bit. Exited that company, and I had some money, so I took some time off and kind of figured out my life. I was still single at the time, and then met my husband at NAB in Las Vegas. So
Wow.
that's what brought me to LA. And got me into the world of entertainment. So my husband, started as a child actor, found out that acting wasn't his thing. He really enjoyed what was going on behind the camera, so got into visual effects and grew from there. And when we got together, we created our first kind of production company, and doing visual effects and production. And yeah, like I've said, I've started and sold a couple companies. I'm a hustler. I don't know if it's my Chicago side or or what it is, but I want to be a really good example for my kids, and I want them to understand, I want them to work hard. I don't want them to just have things handed to them. And it's been a wild ride. I wrote a book, so that afforded me to be able to travel the world and speak on, the funniest one was I was keynote for day 2 of Internet World in Stockholm, and day 1 was Kevin Kelly. And I go to him, the creator of Wired Magazine.
That's awesome.
And I said to him, I was like, who do they think I am? And he goes, you are you, girl. And I was like, oh my God. So it was a great experience. So, but I think coming to LA and the whole system that is, celebrity and pomp and circumstance here, I've enjoyed it all. I've embraced it. And I think you saw Charlie on my LinkedIn. I've really embraced LinkedIn, and I love LinkedIn as a platform. I think it's my favorite social media because I actually feel smart after being on there. I think I find everything in my industry. But circling back of being a female in very heavily run, I would say, male industry, specifically visual effects and kind of everything that we're doing now, I just don't accept no, right? I very much believe in kind of like social fabric and bringing people together. So I host and do a ton of events. I network as much as I possibly can. And I'm trying to be authentic, right? Like my mission is to literally do this for my kids to make sure AI doesn't become this like monster. I want to make sure that it's verified for them to learn. My kids just went back to school yesterday, right? They're in TK, kindergarten, and then a freshman in high school. And for the younger ones, I think about what is their education going to look like? Now that we have all of this AI and, kind of cascading down upon the school system, what's going to happen here in America with the school system? I don't know. I hope I can be part of that. I hope I can be part of that change, to immerse them in content that's real and true and not synthetic.
Tell us about your book. What was the book? What's the title? What was it about? What's the...
Yeah, so I have it on the shelf behind me. I'll grab it.
Okay, go show it to us.
So it was called Pinterest for Business.
Ah,
It was when Pinterest first came out. I worked with 5 different psychologists of how the brain reacts to imagery. And so I got a really deep dive in that. And this is before, ChatGPT. So I really had to to work on it. And creating the outline was an amazing experience. And I got to meet a lot of amazing people. And just overall, books, this one I'm holding in my hand, there is real paper. I'll be able to give it to my children one day and say, this is what a book was, but, so I am really proud of having written a book. And
have you scanned it? Have you scanned that book?
no, good idea, Ted.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm going to give it to the crew today.
There you go.
I'm going to put it in the pile. Yeah, no, really good idea. How
So
fun.
let me ask a technical question. We haven't really dived into the tech that much. We've sort of danced around it and we've used all the industry terms because the 3 of us, the 4 of us certainly, but Charlie and Rony and I know what a Gaussian splat is and what scanning is and so forth and so on. But for our listeners, maybe first start by telling us what's the smallest physical object you've scanned so far or created, and what's the largest so far? You mentioned the casino that's still in work, but what's the thing you've done so far that's in your asset library? And give us as much technical information on how you do this. Charlie mentioned that you can do a version of this on your phone now. You can walk around an object with a phone and it will interpolate thousands of images and build that into something that has a certain resolution characteristic and a certain look to it. It tends to not be photorealistic in some ways and photorealistic in other ways, right? It's kind of an odd, uncanny valley of it looks like it's that, but it's not exactly that. But what you're doing is trying to create exactly that. So maybe just give some technical details on the tools you use, how you use them, the crew people that, the expertise, what it sort of costs to own these tools or rent these tools, things like that would be interesting, I think, for us to hear.
Amazing. Yeah. So I think there's 2 categories to place it into: environments, right? Large scale things that we're scanning, places, et cetera, and then objects. So I'll start with objects. You asked about the smallest object. We have scanned bugs. So there was a museum that came to us to scan some bugs. So we effectively did small bugs, And then as far as like large objects, we've done cars. So I think cars have been pretty easy for us. And then moving into environments, the Mystic Seaport was the largest location. We did the Sepulveda Bridge here in Los Angeles. So that's a very famous bridge. A lot of, and then we did the high school from Greece and Pretty in Pink. So that one.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, that one's great.
In Chicago.
No, it's here in
Oh, is it? I thought it was in Chicago.
Yeah, it's here in Los Angeles. So, and then going down to the tools. So we use Leica's RTC 360, and that is LiDAR. It goes out 150 feet. It takes about 3 minutes, a 3-minute pass. It does LiDAR, and then it takes a shitload of pictures. So that's the LiDAR pass. We do that with drones as well. So we use DJI drones. And we have a LiDAR payload on our drones as well. So we send those out on missions and they will go through. I think the largest location we did was Gillette Stadium. So yeah, Gillette Stadium, we did FedEx Field as well. And we did those in one day. So that was, another location that we were able to accomplish very quickly. Our team ranges anywhere from, 5 to 10 people. It depends if we're doing air missions. So sometimes, specifically FedEx Field was in the DoD space for the White House, so we weren't able to do our aerial missions there. So our team actually climbed up these rafters and got as high as we possibly could, and we were able to get LiDAR that way. So we do a LiDAR pass. Then we go through with a specific rig that we've built for photogrammetry. So we take tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of photos. And we have those ready to go for textures and applying them to everything that we're doing with LiDAR and creating the meshes. In addition to that, we've now are using splats, and we capture that with a unit called XGrids. So XGrids came out of a company. There was a bunch of DJI people who left and created XGrids to get into the spot technologies. So they're great. We're partners with them. We are the California distributor for them. So if you're going to buy an XGrids device, you would buy it through us here. So all the studios, a lot of them are buying these devices now for pre-production needs, because if you can create a splat, you can basically place all your shots, and it's pretty effective that way. So yeah, that's how we capture all of our data. Then we go in and register it. We bring it back. We go through all the data, creating the point clouds, and our artists get to work. We don't use anyone overseas. All of our artists are here in Los Angeles, so I'm very proud of that. You can come to our facilities. We pass through, some of the hardest checks with the largest studios for, how we deal with our data. So we're really proud of being local here to LA, and, dealing with all the data in a transparent way.
Jessica, it was great to have you on the show and to consider the implications of a digital twin of the physical world. I really think it's interesting what Niantic is doing. I think part of what they're thinking is robots, but they tend to think globally. So I'm sure they understand the massive number of applications and how that figures in with their technology. So really interested to find out how NVIDIA will end up playing a role in this ecosystem. Anyway, thanks everybody for listening. Great to see you this week, Ted and Rony. Let's do it again next week.
Really good show. A nice divergent from our normal path. This was very interesting, fascinating day.
All right. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here next Friday.
Thanks, everyone.